Hi folks, Seth Leipson here. Thanks for watching my monologue. In these uncertain times, you may be thinking about personal protection. If you are, I urge you to visit my friends at Guns Etc. They'll help you find the perfect protection for yourself and your family, and they can even teach you how to use it. They've been protecting Arizonans for over 33 years, and they stand for the great principles this country was founded upon. Or you can just click on gunsetcetera.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back to the Seth Leipson Show. Happy December 2nd, 2020. There's a funny thing about this season every year. It's almost always devoid of major news. But not this one, not this time. Whether we want it or not, the age of the media we all live in now is one where supply is greater than the demand by a lot. Sure, we still have questions and concerns, to put it no stronger, about who will be the next president of the United States. But strangely enough, perhaps ironically enough, that is not the news that the saturation of supply seems to provide. To most media, that's what they'd call a wrap. All done, no stories there. It's not the first time. This year, in the overabundance of news, the bulk of the media puts wraps on other items as well, puts the quietus on stories of seeming interest, be it violent riots, be it the deaths of individuals about whom those riots were the purported impetus, be it stories about international corruption and the Biden family, be it the most relevant of statistics regarding health. One might look back at those collection of stories and think careers could have been made covering them, either via deep investigative journalism or just good plain old reporting. But interest in any of that was never born because the larger import was to quell curiosity in all of it. Why? Those stories wouldn't serve the larger purpose, certainly not in an election year. Not when they had a Democrat to elect as president. And it may just have worked. As the Media Research Center found in a large poll of voters in 7 swing states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, CNS reports it this way. The voters were asked about their knowledge of 8 news stories, all of which the liberal media had downplayed or censored. For instance, despite the Me Too movement and the media coverage it garnered, the survey found that 35.4% of Biden voters were unaware of the serious allegations of sexual assault made by Tara Reade against Joe Biden. If they had known about Tara Reade's sexual assault allegations, 8.9% said they would have changed their vote. This would have flipped all 6 of the swing states now in the Biden column. Another important story buried by the major media was the Hunter Biden laptop story, which showed that Joe Biden was aware of his son's business dealings in the Ukraine and in communist China. 45.1% of Biden voters said they were unaware of that story. The poll found awareness of the Hunter Biden scandal would have led to 9.4% of Biden voters to abandon the Democratic candidate, flipping all 6 of the states as well. Similar results were found when Biden voters were asked about the other 6 censored stories: Kamala Harris's left-wing policies, positive economic and job reports, Middle East peace deals brokered by Trump, energy independence, and the swift vaccine production as a result of Operation Warp Speed. Looking at all of these issues together, the poll found that a total of 17% of Biden's voters said they would have changed their vote if they had been aware of one or more of these stories. According to MRC Media Research Center, this would have moved every one of the swing states into Trump's column, some by a huge margin. One wonders what result if the media reported that Donald Trump denounced white supremacy and supremacists at least a dozen times or more, or if they quit asking him to do so when they had him available for an interview, town hall, or debate. In charge. That's what the media had to reclaim and prove this year. I've said before, one of the successes of Donald Trump that so angered the media from the get-go was that he did not defer to them. He did not bow to them. He did not think, as so many other Republicans before him did, that they were in charge. He simply wasn't cowed by the media, and this angered them to no end. It questioned their assumed power, and it shifted norms to where they should have been, but haven't been in a very long time. Or hear the people actually rule. The media haven't believed that in a long time, and even by calling them fake or in the business of peddling fake news, it angered them to the point of them claiming he was inspiring violence against them. Now, quick, other than as pointed out here yesterday, how many stories have you seen about Joe Biden's pick for the director of OMB having actually physically assaulted a member of the media? One may say 2020 was the year the media exercised their revenge, and Kaiser Soze-like showed Donald Trump and Republicans what true will really was, who truly was in charge. What's of passing interest is how much it worked, how much sway it had, especially given the polling cited above. Many of us thought the dinosaur media was decreasingly relevant, but we missed something in that thought. It is and was relevant to its base, those of liberal bent and mindset and those inclined toward it. We may have not been interested in CNN, but a lot of liberal and middle-of-the-road people were, and boy, was CNN interested in them. Thus, it turns out the first election interference to occur in 2020 was really the media's. Thus, it turns out the first efforts of voter suppression to occur in 2020 was really the media's. Thus, it turns out the first violations of election integrity to occur in 2020 was really the media's. Now we have even more proof, thanks to James O'Keefe and his Veritas project. Before we get into that, quick note, the mainstream media, or dinosaur media, does not recognize O'Keefe and his employees as media, despite it doing nothing different than the regular media, except better. Anonymous sources? That's the work of CNN, the Washington Post, and the New York Times, not Veritas. Playing surreptitiously recorded audio, even against the First Lady? That's the business of CNN. Editing and fact-checking? That's not the work of CNN, the Washington Post, or the New York Times. It is a Project Veritas. So let's get to it. As Fox News reports, James O'Keefe revealed Tuesday morning that his organization had been secretly recording the CNN network's conference calls over the span of 2 months. Many of the recordings involve CNN President Jeff Zucker. In several released batches of clips, Zucker is heard sounding off against Trump. During a conference call October 9th, he urged his staff to not, quote, normalize the president's erratic behavior as he was recovering from the coronavirus, suggesting the president's medical treatment was affecting his actions. Normalize the president's behavior? How about just reporting what he said and did? Or not breaking away from his press conferences dealing with the biggest story of the year? O'Keefe also revealed conversations about burying the Hunter Biden laptop story. Jake Tapper went so far as to say, quote, the allegations against Biden's son were too disgusting to repeat on air and that the right wing is going crazy. Too disgusting? Good thing that wasn't the standard with Harvey Weinstein or Jeffrey Epstein or Bill Clinton. Of course, Bill Clinton was in his second term, so it didn't matter back then, I suppose. He wasn't running for re-election. But one does have to conclude something perhaps uncomfortable for us. If the media wants to influence an election outcome, it seems it still can. The polling I spoke about may not have received a lot of other attention, but I can guarantee you where it did. Those major media centers from CNN to the New York Times. I was put in mind of all this as I was watching Showtime's documentary series on Ronald Reagan. It's terrible. It features political scientists and other commentators I've never heard of. The whole point to show how terrible a president Ronald Reagan was. I was put in mind of all this as I thought of Donald Trump during the past 4 years trying to do what was said Reagan did during his presidency, going over the media and directly to the American people. Well, Showtime is now trying to get Reagan back, to set the record unstraight, I guess. It's so paranoid, I don't think it'll work, and poorly produced, but I see the effort. How did Reagan succeed where Trump may not have, though? Well, for one, there was no real Greek chorus of media in the 1980s. CNN was getting its sea legs, and MSNBC didn't exist. The New York Times and Washington Post were much more adult back then. Oh, biased, but adult, with well-known and respected pro-Reagan columnists at both places. The Wall Street Journal was a counterweight, too, in a way that it isn't anymore. And, of course, there was no Facebook or Twitter, always useful to make truth the first of their casualties. What's the lesson? I'll ask you that question. But I think it starts with lawfare and trying to change the standards of libel and slander. I also think it starts with simply knowing these things. But more than anything, if you go back to that old New York Times v. Sullivan Supreme Court case, which started all this absurd special protection the media gets, there's an interesting line in that case. It's this: constitutional protection of the First Amendment, quote, was fashioned to assure unfettered interchange of ideas for the bringing about of political and social changes desired by the people, close quote. Unfettered political and social change desired by the people. It did not say, quote, was fashioned to assure the media unfettered power to substitute its judgments for the changes desired by them. But that is what the media now read it as. And until we fix it or irrigate enough new forests, we will remain in the soup. Being a fly in that soup is not enough. Another thought inspired by C.S. Lewis. I think when we think about my pet passion of schools and education, along the way of our thinking and taking them back, we need to think of our fellow citizens, all of them, as our pupils. And if we do, I think Lewis had it right in saying, quote, for every one pupil who needs to be guarded from a weak excess of sensibility, there are 3 who need to be awakened from the slumber of cold vulgarity, close quote. Worth repeating that. For every one pupil who needs to be guarded from a weak excess of sensibility, there are 3 who need to be awakened from the slumber of cold vulgarity. Why did he say that? His own answer, quote, by starving the sensibility of our pupils, we only make them easier prey to the propagandist when he comes. Well, he's here. So let's get to work. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.